Please move into the room and please take a seat. We'll get going with our next keynote presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Alan Buerger, the Executive Chairman and Co-founder of Coventry. Alan, as many of you know, is an expert on the convergence of life insurance and capital markets. Coventry's efforts have enabled policyholders to receive more than $4 billion for their unwanted policies. Alan is a former LISA chair and a frequent speaker on a range of subjects, including emerging trends in life insurance, longevity-linked assets, and balancing regulation and opportunity in growing industries. Alan, thank you again for joining us today. Welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. This is an emotional day for me. I'm not finished yet, but I would say it's close to the culmination of an extraordinary career. Fulfilling, meaningful, beyond my wildest expectations and dreams. One where I can look back, and I do look back, and know that what I've done, and you'll hear what the co-founder of Coventry and my wife, the two of us have done, has had a significant effect on all the people that we as an industry and Coventry as a company serve, and all of the people who work in this industry. In Brian's introduction, he gave various titles of things that I've talked about over the years, but I'll sum it up in a few words, and that is my real belief in life insurance and my utter disrespect for the life insurance industry, meaning the carriers. And I've been throughout my career in the life settlement business after I stopped selling life insurance in disrupting the carriers. And that's what, in fact, we do. As much as I think life insurance is a meaningful, valuable, necessary product for the consumers that buy it, you'll hear me make a few comments that are less complimentary of those who manufacture the product. So, first thing I'd like to say is good morning. Now I got to do it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. That's validation for me that I know I'm here. I should tell you that for this event, Reed let me out of the home. Usually when I speak, I like to cite different quotes. Today will be no different, although with any luck, most of the quotes are quotes that I haven't used before. Not all of them. But one I saw, since they asked me to talk about carrier encroachment, which I will talk briefly about, a quote I saw just the other day: "You may have to fight a battle more than once to win it." And that's very much what carrier encroachment is about. It's a continuation of the fight that we have with the life insurance carriers and the life insurance industry. Before I get to the carrier encroachment, I want to read a very brief story. Phil, where are you? Is Phil in here? Well, I thought of him and me when I found this. My brother-in-law sent me this 20 years ago, and it probably will mean as much to most of you as it meant to me 20 years ago. I thought it was cute. It's 20 years later, and it has much more meaning to me now. So take it in the spirit in which it's offered. A group of 40-year-old buddies discussed where they would meet for dinner. Finally, it was agreed that they would meet at the Ocean View restaurant because the waitresses had low-cut blouses and they were very young. 10 years later, at age 50, the group again discussed where they should go for dinner. Finally, it was agreed they'd go to the Ocean View restaurant because the food was very good and the wine selection was excellent. 10 years later, at age 60, the group again discussed where they should meet for dinner. Finally, it was agreed they would go to the Ocean View restaurant because they could eat in peace and quiet, and the restaurant had a beautiful view of the ocean. 10 years later, at age 70, the group once again discussed where they should go for dinner. And it was agreed they'd go to the Ocean View restaurant because the restaurant was wheelchair accessible and they even had an elevator. And then, 10 years later, at age 80, the group once again discussed where they should meet for dinner, and finally it was agreed they'd go to the Ocean Club, Ocean View restaurant, because they had never been there before. And as I get older, I've come to appreciate that story more and more. I sent it to my brother-in-law, and he said, I didn't remember ever sending that to you. Carrier encroachment. I know there was a presentation at the members-only meeting yesterday, and the summary of that is available from Lisa, and I'm not going to try to repeat what many of you already heard. But first, let me define carrier encroachment for those of you who took the pandemic off. Right before the pandemic, Lincoln started offering an enhanced cash surrender value based on formulas that we couldn't really figure out, but it was obvious to release some reserves. And they unilaterally were sending letters to their clients who were older, offering them a higher cash surrender value if they would surrender. We got activated, met with a number of regulators, led by Nat Chapo, and made headway with some regulators, and the pandemic hit and everything shut down. During the pandemic, John Hancock started doing the same thing. We don't believe this is appropriate conduct for the carriers. I personally believe it steps right up to the line, and in some states crosses the line of a life settlement. And it was limited to those two carriers. Then Sun Life came along and with a different approach, and when their policy service department would learn that a policy was going to be settled, they would ask what the offer was and they would beat it. They wouldn't underwrite. They had no idea whether it was true or not. I would tell people, if you're with Sun Life and you want more money from them and you're healthy, just tell them you're settling your policy. They'll give you more money. But that was further crossing the line. More recently, Transamerica crossed the line, they jumped over it, and they're running as far and fast over that line as they can get. They are medically underwriting senior policy owners. And their material that they send out reads like what any of us here would explain to a consumer. And that, to me, is a life settlement. Now, our efforts, we've had several states, state insurance departments acknowledge that in one degree or another, their original view of Hancock and Lincoln was, well, it's better for the consumer. And regulators, bureaucrats, aren't always the most motivated, and given the pandemic, that motivation was even less. And Nat brilliantly came up with an argument that is referred to as the smoothness test, which simply says carriers can't unilaterally just increase their cash values inconsistent with the way the policy form was filed. It's a technical argument. It's not about life settlements, and it's dead on accurate. And still, the regulators kind of went ho-hum. Hard to activate them, hard to get them engaged. Indiana's commissioner said, we think this is wrong. And we don't want carriers doing it again in the future. They wouldn't tell the carriers that we're doing it, stop. So, again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but here's my view of it. What we as an industry have to do is make it more painful for the regulators to not do their jobs than it is for them to do their jobs. So, with that in mind, we, the Lisa, led by Nat's efforts, have worked with NCOIL and got a unanimous resolution out of the NCOIL's National Conference of Insurance Legislators, out of their life insurance committee, a unilateral statement that the regulators, the NAIC, must enforce the laws that are on the books, because that part's not controversial. And that's the beginning of a strategy to put pressure on the NAIC and the individual state insurance departments. And with Transamerica's actions, we can now say with evidence what we said in the beginning. If you allow what Hancock and Lincoln are doing, it's going to lead carriers to do things that are even more egregious, and that's Transamerica. So, that strategy is starting to bear fruit. I'm visiting with one insurance department with Nat and Wes Bissett, who many of you heard yesterday, who's our state, he represents Lisa in the States, meeting with the senior people in one of the larger insurance departments, I think next Wednesday or Thursday, to make the case about why this conduct, which doesn't allow for rescission, which doesn't have the disclosures we're required to make, and so on and so forth, why, and what their laws say, why they need to step in and say no more. Ralph Nader, 75 years ago, said, for almost 70 years, the life insurance companies have been a smug, sacred cow, feeding the public a steady line of sacred bull. So he said that maybe 1975, which predates a number of you, but Ralph Nader was the leading consumer advocate in the country, ran for president, and he took on the automobile industry, the insurance industry, and a variety of other industries. What he was referring to was in 1905 and 1906, hearings called the Armstrong investigation. The Armstrong investigation was about the abuses of the life insurance companies at that time in New York. Senator Armstrong was a New York legislator, and he said what's happening in the insurance industry in our state is anti-consumer and must be stopped. And I happen to own the 13 volumes of the 55 or 56 hearings. I haven't read them, but I've perused them. What they're about, the short story, were tontines, and the way I'll describe that is lapse-supported pricing. That's how New York Life and Metropolitan Life and Prudential and Equitable became the big companies they became, by selling lapse-supported pricing, where I think it was Justice Brandeis said, the 90% of the losers, those who lapse, are supporting the 10% of the winners, those that don't lapse. I'm here today to say, to make it harder for the regulators to not do their job than to do their job, it may be time to start putting in our articles and in our talks, and if you meet with a regulator, because they all know about the Armstrong hearings, to say it might be time to have another Armstrong investigation, because the carrier's conduct is unacceptable. Interestingly enough, it started with Equitable and just how they were just abusing their clients. And things come full circle. So I'd like to see the Lisa board consider press releases, and if Lisa doesn't want to do it, creating a nonprofit that represents consumers of life insurance consumers, and have them do it, that takes to task Transamerica, that takes to task regulators that aren't doing their jobs, that takes to task the carriers in general. We are consumer advocates. We make a lot of money being consumer advocates, but we benefit consumers. And we are there to give them a choice, to give them an option. And we should, as an industry, as individual firms, we should be speaking out on behalf of our customers, of our consumers, of the policy owners in this country. Let me move on to other carrier conduct. And another quote. There was a book written in 1936, a book I have read. It's a short book, it's not 13 volumes. Entitled, Life Insurance, a Legalized Racket. 1936. It was written by Abraham Epstein, who was the executive secretary of the American Association of Social Security. And this is his quote. This is from the book. The agent, the life insurance agent, the agent is not only prevented from giving honest advice, he is prompted in self-defense to give deliberately dishonest advice. To what am I referring? Because most carriers now don't give agents the hard time they did 20 years ago. Agents are the independent agents, not career agents, which is where I'm headed, by the way, can advise on settlements and even get paid. But the career agent companies, New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, State Farm, the three largest in terms of insurance in force, and then maybe another dozen, prohibit the discussion of life settlements. We owned in our portfolio, we own several, a New York Life term policy. And we needed to convert it. And our service department contacted New York Life and said, how do we convert this? And they said, well, you need to go to the agent. First we needed the illustration. We got that from the agent. And then a month later, we had bought the policy, and months down the road, we needed to convert it, and we had to have an agent. So we went to the agent. He wouldn't return our phone calls. This went on for a couple weeks. We go back to New York Life and say, we need to convert this. They say, you got to do it through the agent. So we told by email, he wouldn't respond to emails, that so-and-so in the home office said, you have to do this. And we told the home office we couldn't get the agent to return the call. Well, finally, something connected, and the agent said, I didn't think I was allowed. Now, he wasn't recommending somebody sell their policy. We already owned it. But he said he didn't think he was allowed. He said it in writing. So, as somebody Reed looks to pick fights with people, that's part of my job description now, that I'm no longer the CEO. Reed says, go get him. I got real excited about 3-4 months ago and said, let's go get these bastards. I figured we had a great antitrust case. I was wrong. Invested a lot of time. I studied McCarran-Ferguson of federal law, which gives life insurance carriers an antitrust exemption. So, long story short, maybe there's something there, but not worth the investment. So, I've been working with Nat, and we've come up with another theory. Let's go after them for their variable policies, because they're securities. And now the SEC has Reg BI, and Reg BI, among other things, says something to the effect that a broker-dealer, Darrell, help me out here. A broker-dealer must disclose any conflicts of interest and act as a fiduciary. So let's take that one step up. A manufacturer of a security that owns a broker-dealer would seem to have a heightened level of responsibility under current law. If we can't go after the general account products, maybe we can get our nose in the tent going after the variable products. So what we're working on right now is to go after that premise. This morning, right on topic, as if on cue, I was given an email from Gary, which came to him from one of you, about an Equitable variable policy that Equitable would not let the rep, who's already decided to sell it to us, I'm guessing because of our ad, but the rep wasn't allowed to assist in any way, and I don't know what the resolution of it was, but it simply demonstrates how they're not looking after their clients' interest. They're certainly not acting as a fiduciary. And I would suggest that and by the way, all the carrier-owned, or virtually all the carrier-owned broker-dealers prohibit their reps, even carriers that allow their agents and reps to assist with a settlement that's not variable, they prohibit it if it's variable. It's the next battlefield. Well, it's not quite the next battlefield. You'll read sometime this week about an antitrust suit that we filed against a carrier for what, and you'll see it, I had hoped to be able to discuss it today. We filed it last Tuesday, and the damn state we filed it in needs to put a stamp on it for it to be formally filed. And I can't talk about it until it's formally filed. They had 4 days. They couldn't rubber stamp it, but it'll get done. But it's an antitrust suit alleging a monopsony or in other words, a monopoly on term conversion settlements. If you've seen our ads, you know we go after term insurance. And 15 to 20% of what we do originated as term insurance. I think it's going to be a big growth area for our market. And we allege that this carrier, in a variety of ways, has tried to prevent these transactions from occurring. So, we need to take the fight to the carriers, and we need to have the regulators understand they're in a much worse position if they don't do their job than if they do it. And with that, I want to change topics. Can we have it's a new commercial.
These bills are crazy.
She has no idea she's sitting on a gold mine.
Well, she doesn't know that if she owns a life insurance policy of $100,000 or more, she can sell all or part of it to Coventry for cash, even a term policy.
Even a term policy?
Even a term policy!
Find out if you're sitting on a gold mine. Call Coventry Direct today at 800-406-0700 or visit coventrydirect.com.
That's one of 3 gold mine commercials. We have a 60-second with a couple sitting in some Adirondack chairs talking about they thought they had planned for their retirement, and then all of a sudden it goes down to the gold mine. We have a 60-second version of that and a 30-second version of that, and then our favorite is the one you just saw. And you'll understand in a minute why I chose to show that right now. You have honored me with the Buerger Industry Leadership Award. It's extraordinary. I commented on it at the top of my remarks. It's humbling. I'm proud. And it's nice for my healthy ego anyway. And it's the culmination of a lot of work and commitment and capital. And the people at Coventry, several of whom are here, and Reed, and all the people that have worked for us over the years have helped me put me here and receive this honor. But one person, more than anyone, deserves to be here with me, and this award belongs to her as much as me. And that's my wife, Connie, who was going to be here, but unfortunately, the latter part of the week got an eye infection, and right now it's a problem. It'll go away soon, but she couldn't make it. I was going to say that those at Coventry have to report back to her if I say something good and keep their mouth shut if I don't. But it's being recorded, so it better damn well be good, what I say. And it is. Not necessarily what I say, but what I have to say. We've been married for 52 years. We've been business partners, co-founders of the company, for 40 years. It's an uncommon partnership. I'm truly blessed to be part of it. And let me tell you about the power, the strength, and resilience of our partnership, and why I say this award belongs to the two of us. The toughest sale, when I sold insurance for 25 years, so I was used to making tough sales. The toughest sale I ever made was to convince Connie we should work together. I had migrated to Shearson American Express at the time, and finally, after a 10-year sales cycle, I convinced her that we ought to work together. Now let me stop right here and tell you that before we met, when I was maybe 21 or 22 years old, thinking about my future, I had 3 wishes. I wanted a home, an old home with a lot of property. I wanted to live near where I work. And I wanted to work with my spouse. I didn't have a girlfriend, but I wanted to work with my spouse. I knew that. All 3 of my wishes came true. But it took a long time to convince my spouse. My closing line was, all business is the same, it's only the jargon that is different. Some of that's true. But her background was advertising and marketing, and her jargon certainly was different. The first few weeks were really exciting. We'd get in the car together, we'd go to the office together. A quick story, the first day we went to the office, we got in early, we came home late, we were in Center City, Philadelphia, we lived in the suburbs. We get out of the car, we get to the back door, and I'm not thinking clearly, and I said, oh, I'm exhausted today. Well, she was with me all day long. And I quickly recovered and said, I didn't sleep well last night. So in those early weeks, Connie went through my files. I had been in the insurance business for 10 years. She went through all the client files. Now, what she didn't know about, what she lacked in insurance knowledge, she more than made up for with a rare combination of instinct, single-mindedness, and audacity. Sound familiar? Anybody at Coventry? After a few weeks of going through the files, she came to me and said, we've got to throw out all these files. Well, if you've ever sold, your client files are your gold, they're your jewels. In her view, they offered us no future. Now, Connie does not, as a rule, suffer from self-doubt. She didn't believe we should keep the files. She did not speculate. And she did not waver, in her view. And I, of course, said, no, no, no effing way. And she pointedly reminded me what our deal was. You said, if I come in, we're going to be partners. I'm your partner, and I'm telling you there's no future in this for us if we keep these people's clients. So as a compromise, I suggested, okay, let's give them to so-and-so who was a friend, who was an insurance agent. She said, no. He'll just keep calling us about them. We don't want to be bothered. We should tell the clients when they call they're now being serviced by the insurance company. This is heresy. I ultimately conceded to throw out 85% of the files. 10% we gave to an agent, and 5% we kept. Every year for more than a decade, our revenue increased by upwards of 100% or more every year because we threw out those valuable files. Let me give you a few other tidbits about our partnership and why it has been so extraordinarily successful, and why Connie, in my heart and mine, shares this award with me. When we started working together, she, as I said, didn't know a great deal about insurance, but we'd go on appointments together. And she'd always have a pad, and she'd have a pen. And the pen always had red ink. And everything was great. I was doing the presentation. Everything was great. Up to the point where out of the corner of my eye, I saw Connie taking notes in red ink. What were the notes about? It was about what I was doing wrong. It was painful, it was relentless, and she was accurate. One of my favorite stories was we worked with stockbrokers, and one of the biggest stockbrokers in the Philadelphia area asked me to come speak to his biggest client about annuities. I was the life insurance and annuity specialist. So I said, fine. I said, Connie's coming with me. She had just started. And he said, no way. And I said, yeah, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And we came, and she just was listening to me present a $100,000 deferred annuity. This is in 1985. And I didn't notice it at the time, but this guy, Oscar was literally moving his chair back, getting further and further and further away from me. And I knew I wasn't reaching him. I was a good enough salesman at that point. I understood I wasn't getting where I needed to go. And Connie spoke up. She didn't care about annuities or anything else. And the broker's face turned white when she started to speak. And she said, Oscar, you seem really bothered by something. What's bothering you? And he said, I just came from my estate attorney, and he said, my family's going to have to pay $20 million in estate taxes. I was ready to go. 3 sentences later, he said, call so-and-so, let's meet this week. And I sold him a $20 million insurance policy. That was a real life lesson. Another life lesson was I had created, because I was very technical and creative, and I understood the tax laws that related to insurance. Now, this is annoying. My iWatch wants to know if I've had a hard fall, and am I okay? And it's because I hit this. You should imagine, you can only imagine what it does when I work out. So I created a concept to take advantage of the tax attributes of insurance. And I sold it in units of premium. I feel badly right now for Reed because he's heard all these stories. Sold it in units of premium of $10,000 of premium. I'd call on a 68-year-old doctor and I'd say he ought to insure his single 39-year-old son. Actually, what I'd say is, you ought to do this, take out 1 unit of this. Who can we insure? And he'd say, my 39-year-old son. So I created this concept, $10,000 units of premium. This is in the mid-'80s. Connie looked at it and said, well, why aren't you showing people 25s and 50s? $25,000 a premium? $50,000 of annual premium? Like all salesmen, I had, at least at the subconscious level, I had limits on what I could accomplish. But she was my partner now, so I created sample presentations for 25s and 50s. And in 90 days, I sold 3 $50,000 annual premiums. Now, Reed's had an experience like this. I hadn't planned to say this, but right before 9/11, we were supposed to meet at the World Trade Center, and his wife said, I don't want to stay there, we're not staying there. I'm talking 9/10. We're not staying there, we got to have the meeting someplace else, we're going to stay someplace else. And then 9/11 occurred. So he's got the same kind of problems I've got. At least in my family, we think that's funny. A last story, one that's probably illustrates the influence that my business partner, my wife, has had on me more than any other, and it's also the most embarrassing. One thing that Connie could not abide back then, and when I lapse, she can't abide it now. As an agent, you're a one-man band. And you're used to saying, I did this, I sold that, I think you ought to do this. And Connie would say to me every day, all day, she'd correct me. We. If you say I, people are going to think we're smaller. If it's we got a business. It's not you, it's we. And it's we because I'm your partner. It's we. Do not say I. So when I was on meetings where she wasn't there, it was like she was sitting on my shoulder. And that's awful. It's just awful. It knocks you off your game. And to illustrate that point, I'll tell you an actual true story. It's embarrassing but funny, and it illustrates the point. I was talking to a prospect, and I had to go to the men's room. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me, we've got to go to the men's room. Can you show me where it is? True story. And a funny one. And I gradually learned to say we. And I gradually learned to think about the business. And it's why this award belongs to my wife, my business partner, and the co-founder of our business. So, with that, in 2008, we thought about going direct. Well, let me back up even before then. This week, I looked at a lot of websites of people in the industry. I said Connie's background was advertising and marketing. And I read a lot of material on different websites. And I found something that made me smile, did not surprise me. On many of those websites describing a life settlement transaction, the value to the consumer, I found words verbatim that Connie wrote over 20 years ago. The reason we showed the commercial when we did, you've all seen our other commercials, the Coventry commercials. The commercial you just saw and the two others that are part of the family of this family of commercials, and the commercials we've used over the last 7 years, Connie did them all. They've affected everyone in this industry. You might be sitting on a gold mine. We were in the Bahamas. I went to sleep about 11 o'clock. At 4 in the morning, I woke up, went into our great room, and there she was with a legal pad writing out the script. The next morning, after she finally went to sleep and got up, she said, "I don't like any of that. We're going to go back to the script that we had the day before." But that's the commitment and the unending view that we have to get better. And a view that's influenced me every day for 52 years. I stepped down as CEO in 2017. For the most part, Gary and I were watching football yesterday. And I was asked a question, what do you do now? Meaning in the business. And I went, and Gary stepped in, thankfully, and he said he does projects. And I do. Most of them come from Reed. Many of them come from me and my experience. I so enjoy not being the CEO. And what makes that even better is Reed does a spectacular job as CEO. I got a call from our general counsel on Friday afternoon, or Friday right at lunchtime. Now, I had done a 3-hour workout that morning, and if I do a 3-hour workout, I like to take a nap. But I got a call, general counsel. She went over a problem, nothing that serious, but I said, you got to involve Reed in this. I can't answer your question. So we get Reed on our Teams call. We go through it, and Reed says to me, Alan, will you take care of this? And that was a project. It was nothing, not a big deal, and it was fine. And I didn't get my nap, but that was fine. Another quote that I like. I don't know who this person is. Anatole France. Does anybody know who that is? Quotes the following. To accomplish great things, we must not only act, but also dream. Not only plan, but also believe. I believe what we do are great things. And as I started, sometimes a fight has to be fought more than once to win. We've got to take it to the carriers. I explore such things as ballot initiatives. Now, they're too expensive to go through, but you want to scare the pants off the insurance carriers? Maybe a ballot initiative in Colorado or California that requires them to do this, that, or the other thing and advise their clients about what they say they do, and that's protect their financial security in retirement. Maybe require them to do it we certainly would get a lot of PR value out of that for our industry. So we have to think outside the box as an industry. I commit to you that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, but I'm thinking about the Ocean View restaurant and can't remember whether I've been there before or not. Or at least I worry that I won't be able to remember. I'll keep working on your behalf, but I'd like all of us to be working it together, to commit our time, to commit our money, certainly our ingenuity. This is an industry of ingenuity, to make things better for our industry and to make things better for the people we serve. All of you know that over the years, we've had our innings with Spitzer, with AIG, and other controversies. I like to think of a song by Barry Manilow. I made it through the rain. I kept my world protected, and you're part of my world. And Coventry's part of my world, and Connie's part of my world. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all the many times I have, and today. And because they're recording this, I would appreciate it if you'd give Connie a real round of applause. I think I have time for a couple questions, if anybody wants to ask any questions. Yes? Who pays for lunch? When Connie and I go out for lunch? Read. I'm going to read one more story. And I'm going to do this. The most flattering thing for a speaker is to hear a month, a year, 20 years later that something he or she said resonated with a member of the audience. Because if you can reach, as a speaker, if I can reach one person here, I've succeeded. And I've had two instances in the last few months that really brought a smile to my face. One was one of our attorneys was telling me of a conversation she had with outside counsel who said, "Oh, I met your founder. We had dinner 20 years ago. He said something to me 20 years ago that I still remember." Well, I said, "Amy, what's that?" And she said, "I didn't remember his name. I met him once, had dinner with him once." And he said, "Alan said life insurance companies are in the business of collecting premiums, not paying claims." And that apparently affected him because his practice is with life insurance companies. And that was 20 years later to hear that brought a smile to my face. And then Reed recently related a conversation to me about a conversation he had with somebody here in this room, talking about the future. And he related a story that I've told once before this group. And I'm going to tell it again. So this is what I'd like to close with today. It's about an old man who lived in a small village. He was the poorest man in that village, but he owned the most beautiful white stallion, and the king offered him a small fortune for it. After a terribly harsh winter, during which the old man and his family nearly starved, the townspeople came to visit him, and the old man And they said to him, "Old man, you can hardly afford to feed your family. Sell the stallion," they said. "You will be rich. If you do not, you are a fool." "It's too early to tell," replied the old man. A few months later, the old man woke to find that the stallion had run away. Once again, the townspeople came, and they said, "Old man, see? If you had sold the king your horse, you would be rich. Now you have nothing. You are a fool." "It's too early to tell," replied the old man. 2 weeks later, the white stallion returned. Along with it came 3 other beautiful white stallions. "Old man," the townspeople said, "we are the fools. Now you can sell the stallion to the king and still have 3 stallions left. You are smart." And the old man said, "It's too early to tell." The following week, the old man, his son, was working with the stallions, breaking them in, was thrown, crushing both his legs. The townspeople paid a visit to the old man. They said, "Old man, if you just sold the stallion to the king, you would be rich, your son would not be crippled. You are a fool." "It's too early to tell," replied the old man. Next month, war broke out with the neighboring village, and all of the young men in the old man's village, all of them were sent to battle, and all were killed. The townspeople came and cried to the old man, "We have lost our sons. You are the only one who has not. If you had sold your stallion to the king, your son, too, would be dead. You are so smart." And the old man looked at him and said, "It's too early to tell." Thank you very much. Did I hit the number? Did I hit it? You're welcome.
I'll say on behalf of everyone, we thank you, Alan, for those remarks and those stories. Thank you, everyone here, for a really wonderful morning. This afternoon, we've got lunch for the next hour and 15 minutes. 1:30, we have 2 sessions in a row on industry standardization, perspectives, opportunities, challenges. And then after that, at 3:30, we'll have buses leaving from the doors, kind of the exit near registration, and we'll be going down to the College Football Hall of Fame for some activities and an evening reception at 4 o'clock. So those buses will be there at 3:30. So hope everyone have a really nice lunch, and we'll see everyone back here at 1:30. Thank you.